Hi, if you or your children are suffering because of your relationship with your ex-partner, because it's stressed or strained, or maybe they're just not a nice person, this show is for you. Welcome to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brook Olson and Charlie Jewett. Enjoy another episode now. Hey everybody, Brook Olson and Charlie Jewett here with the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast. We're going to do episode 64. One of my favorite things that I've heard come out of your mouth, Brook, for this title is Don't Just Do Something, Sit There. We're going to explore the fourth rule of disengagement. And I think you've said that you didn't make this up. And I actually think since meeting you, I've heard somebody else say it in some context. But I just think it's genius because typically you hear, don't just sit there, do something, right?
Right. Yeah, no, this isn't my line. This is Eric's line. Eric kind of shoveled me this one a number of years ago. And I adopted it with his permission. So yeah. This became the fourth rule. You know, we've got disengage, disengage, disengage. And then we've got don't just do something, sit there. And they're a little bit different. Mm-hmm. This is the fourth rule of disengagement. And although it sounds like disengagement, it's the pause. It's not just pulling back, it's the pause, and it's the reflective component. It's that look of what's going on here inside of me and what's going on here outside of me. It's an orientation process. It's a looking around and, like we were talking about in the last episode, being mindful.
So if disengage is pulling the car over, don't take action, don't drive anywhere right now, right? Is this looking around and looking at maps and looking at GPS and kind of reorienting? What are you heading the right direction? Or
I think so. And it's the point of, for me, when I'm doing this, it's looking at the activation cycle. It's looking at, first of all, what's going on for me here? I had an interesting piece just yesterday.
Okay.
I did a lot of work around the house last weekend. And I have a tendency to be a little bit self-critical. And I spent some time putting an irrigation system together and doing some drip systems. Mm-hmm. And turned it on, checked it out, everything was working, had the right scales in it, and then I turned it off because everything was wet enough and we weren't going to have to look at it for a while. And the next day, one of them is leaking all over the place. And I'm trying to figure out why it's leaking and what did I do wrong. And it turns out, well, the dial, the timer that I put in had a malfunctioning valve in it. So cool, not my problem. But last night I'm laying in bed and I'm hearing water going. And another system that I put in had sprung a leak and there was water going everywhere. And I went outside and going, wait a minute, I checked this all out and everything was working. What happened here? And I started to look for blame. And that was my first piece. It's like, I did this and I know that it worked and somebody did something. And whether somebody did something or not, it wasn't functioning. And that was the idea. And I started to look at, I watched me going through these ruminations of looking to something that my girlfriend might have done. Yep. She might have done, I don't know. But how is that blame going to fix the problem? And then the next component is I've got this big pot full of water that has a plant in it that if I don't dump it, it's going to die. And my girlfriend's sitting in the background. She's saying, you know, don't tip that over. You're going to hurt yourself. And I just blew past her and I tipped it over and I ended up breaking this big pot. That was kind of an expensive pot that this plant was in.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the little boy went into, oh, I did something wrong. And this was all in real time, internal conversation that I'm having with myself of this don't just do something, sit there.
Yeah.
And not going into blame, not going into self-blame, not going into, but noticing all of the things that I'm doing, that if I did something here other than just process it, I'm going to create a bigger mess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the process of not doing something. That's hitting the pause button and just looking at the activation cycle, looking at the wanting to engage, wanting to blame, wanting to find an excuse, and sitting with the sensations. Because, we're back to that conversation. It's only sensation, right?
Yes. That's where my brain was going. Yep.
And just sitting with that and regulating through it and knowing that there's nothing to be done here. Not right now. Let's just sit in all of these things that are going on. Because this is the place that if you do something from here, it's typically not going to be the right thing. You're going to say something. You're going to do something that is going to cause something to go in a bad direction.
I've been thinking about sensation a lot for the last 2 days and being different because of what I've learned from you and Eric in the show. I had 2 pretty just awful, uncomfortable days, not great days. Not very connected days in my relationship. Things practically didn't go. We got stuck at the border in Mexico for like 2.5 hours, people yelling at each other. And I'm looking at the last 2 days going, ugh, these have been really uncomfortable. And they're 2 special days between a trip where I'm going to be away from my girlfriend and a parenting weekend that's more about the kids than connect. You know what I mean? I'm looking at them and I'm 100% sure in the past these sensations would have led me to do something. I'm like, we need to have a conversation. We got to fix this, or it can't be like this, or if it's going to be like this, it's this. We're over. You know what I mean? Right. They're just the uncomfortable sensation naturally led to action before I had any of this language, and there used to be dualism. Like, are we going to talk about it or not talk about it? Am I going to do nothing or am I going to do something? Like, there was only those 2 options. Mm-hmm. And now, because of your help and Eric and these concepts and re-listening to some of the podcast episodes, because people might think this is crazy, but I record these with you, but I'm not absorbing it the same way as when you listen to it in a car or something like that. You just listen to it. And then the second time around, you always get more. And this time around, Brooke, I'm going, all right, I feel uncomfortable. That's a sensation. And it doesn't mean anything about tomorrow. It doesn't mean anything about my future. As a matter of fact, the past has proven that the one thing that's not ever going to happen is that everything stays the same. Like, the chance of tomorrow feeling exactly the same as today is about 0, right?
Thank God.
And if things go up and down like this, and I've had 2 kind of crappy days, the most natural thing to expect in the future actually is balance, a fun day, you know what I mean, or something like. So I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going through it. Like, all right. I literally said to myself this morning, I'm like, I'm alive. Oh yeah, breathing inside and out, and like, it's okay. Like, so I didn't get a great night's sleep. You know what I mean? I had some like stress or whatever, like restlessness, we'll call it, right? Like, I didn't get a great night's sleep. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. I will get thousands of more shots at a great night's sleep. Thank God. You know what I mean? I get a chance every night.
Yeah.
It like, the take it with a grain of salt is sort of used over and over and over again, but there's an element of that. Like, well, it's just not as big as it used to be, because it used to be, I got to do something about this. Okay. Who says that? Who says you have to do something about this?
And by sitting and waiting, the sensations pass, the sense of urgency passes. And we have an opportunity to come into a more robust conversation with the internal parts. And when we can do that, we start to come more present, our perspective changes, and that activation subsides. So, it's back to this little debacle last night. I got up this morning and the pot's still broken. Mm-hmm. And the plant's still sitting outside. And the added piece to the conversation is my girlfriend's having a party today and she's going to want to use that deck. And it's like, I've got a limited amount of time. And I talked to her and I said, so what's important to you today? And she said, well, I've got to run around and get some things, and clearly I'm not going to have anything outside. So we won't be using the patio. And that was her way of saying, yeah, it's kind of messy out there. Mm-hmm. And rather than getting activated, because I'd already thought the process through the night before, because I thought about what was needed, is I said, okay, well, we don't have another pot. And she said, well, we've got the one pot outside, but I don't know how that's going to balance everything. And I went through that process and said, okay, she wants the plant planted. So I went out, I cleaned up the mess, I planted the plant in the plant, I took the old pot out, I put it out so it was out, and I said, you know, you've got a couple of things to clean up out there, but I think you're good to go. And it was done without a level of activation. It's like I had already settled the process. I'd already looked at the solutions. There wasn't anything that needed to be done in that moment, because I would have screwed it up. I would have done something worse. I would have been in my activation and going through the process. And this way I was like, okay, now, because I didn't engage, because I didn't just do something and sat there, I was able to solve the problem.
So are you saying that the last night when the pot broke, you weren't really following the rule? You were kind of like freaking out and doing stuff, and then you took a break and went to sleep and just let it happen overnight, and then got up and handled it by being present? Or when did you disengage?
Internally, the activation was up. Mm-hmm. I was bothered. I was loathing. I was in that whole process of I didn't do it right, and I had all these parts going on, and I was like, no, this isn't the time to do something. It's time just to sit here and be with all of this stuff, and be in conversation with those internal parts, with those pieces of, you know, you're a bad person. You didn't think it through. You didn't listen to, or you didn't blah, blah, and just go, wow, that's a lot of noise. I was trying to fix something in the moment. I screwed up, and the world goes on. Now I have solutions. Now I can fix this. And then I looked at the pot and I went, wow, this pot is actually only in 3 pieces. I can get some epoxy and I can actually fix that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. But when you're in the activation of that thing that happened, that thing that person said, that thing that you didn't do right, the thing that somebody's being critical of you about, that part of the process where you are not oriented to the here and now, that's the place where we look around and we go, oh, I'm not going to just do something here. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to wait. And I'm going to just take my time until things become clear.
You've probably in the past given me the best news anybody can hear, and that is that sometimes the answer is just take a nap.
Oh, man.
Which is incredible to hear, because I'm sure everything good can be exaggerated. And yes, you could become a person that can't get out of bed, and that's probably an unhealthy expression of napping or sleep. But that's not where the normal American airs. The normal American airs by go, 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 go all the time, no matter what's going on, right? Like basically over engagement at all levels all day long, and so much so that even while you sleep you're having stressful dreams and stuff. You did it overnight, but it doesn't have to be overnight. Like the one thing, and I took this away from what you said, you can tell me if I heard you properly, the one thing you can be sure of, if sensation is uncomfortable or you don't feel the way you want, or you're activated or whatever, is you go to sleep and wake up and it will be different.
Right.
Things will be different.
Right. The nervous system's going to regulate, through taking that pause. But what I've come to really learn to work with, and we're back to parts again, thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
That if I can take that time when I'm in this activation, find my sense of self, and then bring the conversation in. What's really going on here? What's this part saying? And, asking it to dial it back, to sit with it so I can hear it and then go, oh, I can see that this is what really is going on, and just not try to change it, but to hear it, to listen to it, to process it, to go through those ruminations of getting to the bottom of what's really there, because the bottom of what's there is not what's really here. They're really two different things. Then the system settles.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for, because when the system's settled, the action, if there is action to be taken, and there isn't always action to be taken,
right.
But if there's action to be taken, it's clear. And if there's action not to be taken, it's clear. It's not this foggy, do I don't. It's like, no, this is what I do, or this is what I don't. And it's not coming from some amorphed piece of us that is activated because we did something wrong, or that somebody's told us that we've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm. And probably, do you think the baby steps in learning the whole parts idea could just be to stop saying, like, I'm upset, I'm afraid, I'm anxious, but there's a part of me. Like, just start talking to yourself a little bit. Like, there's a part of me right now that wants to freak out. You know what I mean? There's a part of me right now that, I think it's beautiful. My girlfriend very often will say, this is what I used to do, and now I'm doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, she's non-verbally saying, there's a part of me that wants to blank, follow some old pattern, and I'm going to do things differently because I don't like the results. I don't like the outcomes, right?
I'm conscious of it.
But conscious of it, because I think so much of anxiety and unpleasant sensation is actually some triggering event where your nervous system or your mind or whatever goes, oh, this is that. And it's something that was like 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And like, right. This is not that. And that's probably good to say out loud. This is not that. I've actually heard that in relationship counseling when you're struggling in the new relationship, to go, this is not that. This is not my bad marriage. Like, this is this, right? Or you used to say to your grandson, hey, buddy, where are you?
Mm-hmm.
Where are we? Oh, you're in Grandpa's house. You know what I mean? Or we're here, right? This is not that. It's another way of saying that. Whenever your mind or your emotions or whatever go like, oh, this is just like 20 years ago, right? You go, well, hold on. There's a part of me that thinks that, because it's probably trapped at 5 years old or whatever. But the rest of us are going to have a conversation about this. You know what I mean? And take over. And that
20 years ago was more like 45, but that's fine.
There you go, buddy. Well, for some of you, I know I had so much trauma when I was 2. Actually, that's a weird thing to say, because my dad left the family when I was 2, and we've talked a lot about what is it like when you have trauma before you can speak.
Preverbal, it's really big because you don't know how to express, right?
Right? So strange. Yeah. I mean, it's so cool because we did another show talking about leadership for the children, but there's a leadership for you and your parts that's really important to learn. Like, no, self is the leader, not the part of me that got hurt or had arrested development because of a divorce or because of a trauma or because of I mean, I have kids that found their grandmother dead, like went to play with their grandmother and found her dead on her back. And I got the phone call with everybody crying. I mean, that's an incredibly traumatic moment, right? Later in life, as I'm counseling the kids and talking to them, just being in relationship with them, when something's triggered, I mean, there's a part of them, right, that is going to be afraid of that trauma all the time, but it's not the leader. They can. I mean, you told it self-regulating, and there's a way to lead yourself and your parts, kind of the way we talk.
Well, it's about unblending from the parts. It's about having the capacity to sit and go, I'm here.
Yeah.
And that's that. And I'm not that. And this isn't me. And being able to unblend from it and still be in relationship with it.
Yeah.
So that's that component of, but we have to learn how to differentiate between the here and now and the then and then. So that's a lot of practice, and by understanding the process, we can do more of this. Don't just do something, sit there, process. It's really a part of that.
It's funny. It's like, it's not don't be dualistic. It's like when to be and when not to be. Like, let's be dualistic. That is not now. That's when you were 12, right? That was then. This is now. Those are
Right.
two things, right? But there's not. But the right and wrong and should and shouldn't, and those. It's almost like there's a appropriate time to apply.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? It popped into my head for the first time.
But what we can also see in that, and just not to be dualistic about it, is to see where that is dualistic.
Like, where should you not be dualistic about it? Don't say it was good or bad that happened to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
I had sex, hey, there was this sexual molestation. I'm making this up. And that's traumatic. That's horrible. I don't want anybody to go through that. But after the fact,
right.
Well, was it good or bad? That's not really useful.
It was traumatic.
It was traumatic. It hurt is what you want to say about it, right? It hurt. And then you're going to want to go, life is happening for me, not to me. What do I do with this? Like, there's all these other people that have been through this. Like, how do I turn this for good? How do I take lemons and make lemonade, to use a way overused expression, right?
Non-dualism and dualism, right?
I know. Actually, we're coming up with new titles. I think we should do a show called Wait For It. Because really, almost anything, like when you take a nap, you're doing wait for it. When you don't just do something, you wait for it. And if you were counseling me, I'm freaking out that my divorce is over 3 years and I feel like I haven't accomplished anything. And you could just be like, wait for it. Because every other person goes, one day in the mail, you get that piece of paper and it's over. Every storm is like that. Wait for it, it's raining and there's thunder and I don't like it. Okay, hold somebody's hand, sip on some cider, watch a show and enjoy it. Yeah. Just wait for it.
Good. So the idea of doing something incites a reciprocation. So back to the potted plant. If I would have gone into the first impulse, the first activation cycle that I'm in, and I'm going, what did you do? Did you move something? Did you unplug? I know that this worked. And if I went outward with that incites a reciprocation. That incites this piece of somebody coming back and defending themselves. So if we don't go there, if we just sit there, they get a chance to see what's going on. It's like, And here's an example. And I love real-time stuff because this is up in the moment. My girlfriend popped off a little bit. I said, the pot's broken. It's okay. And she goes, no, it's not. And then she backed up. And then she came back a few minutes later and said, how you doing? She noticed that I was processing and I was up in that. And she was reflective of what was going on. And she didn't continue down that, well, that was blah, 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 blah. I was like, no, she stepped back as well. And everybody got this chance to re-regulate. And then to sit back and solve the problem later. The organics of this process really reveals itself and becomes the answer most all of the time. I mean, if there's nothing here, this evolves organically and we start to look around and it's like, again, I could do, no, I don't need to do that. Or no, I don't need to do that. Or there's a temporary solution, I can do that. And it evolves. It doesn't get stuck into, I have to fix this right now. Because there's so little that needs that immediacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I think the worst example of this would be the person that reacts without ever thinking. It's almost instantaneous, like a reaction. And what I'm noticing is I've had some growth in my life in this most recent 2 difficult days that I went through. I've had some growth in my life in this most recent 2 difficult days that I've been through. I didn't react the way I used to. I did not act. I didn't take the actions I used to. But guess what? I did them all in my head. So I'm not to where it's not happening at all. I'm to where I've slowed it down.
Right.
And I'm thinking about it and going, no, I don't need to do anything.
Right.
And I'm sure there's struggles we've had in the past that go through that phase to where you don't even think about it anymore. You just naturally do what's healthy, and you move on to working on the next one, right? But I've noticed that it was conscious this time. I'm like, I'm having some conversations and some arguments in my head that I would have just had out loud in the past. I'm having them and then going, well, they're not helpful.
Right. I've been having some conversations with Eric along this idea of unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence as kind of this arc. And this is kind of what you're talking about. It's like, now I'm conscious of my incompetence.
Right.
And then there's this place of, I'm conscious of my competence.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this place where I'm just competent, right? It's inherent. It's innate. But, we're still on those lines of being conscious of either where we're not competent or conscious of where we're becoming competent in this process. And when we can do that, that's the reflective place of, I can see what's taking place here. I can see what's going on. And I love that my dog is really thirsty today, and she keeps coming in.
So you got
water in the background, and this microphone just picks up everything. Right?
A lot of dog action going on today. I kind of want to pick my dogs up and put them in the camera because it's dog day. Yeah. I mean, we really need to start like blackbeltparenting.com or something like that, because the martial arts are just so helpful with all this kind of stuff you're talking about. Like you start not knowing how to do anything. Right. And then you consciously make yourself do these moves over and over and over again. And what's the entire goal of it is that when you need the move, you do it without thinking about it. You're unconsciously competent to block a punch or to do whatever needs to be done. And that's what we're trying to do, is become black belts at leading our parts, to become black belts at dealing with difficult people. I mean, what's funny is a difficult people being in your life, a difficult person being in your life, really shouldn't need to change anything if you have strong boundaries and you are who you are. It's like, whatever. Like, okay, there's somebody spazzing out right now. I'm gonna go over here.
Just watch the show, right? They're spazzing out. I wonder what's going to happen next.
Yeah, like, this is interesting. Get some popcorn and watch that crazy X.
Yeah, no, and I'm serious. I had a teacher once says, it's like, life evolves and it unfolds. And what we want to do is be in the unfolding, to watch it happen. And what we're talking about in all of these pieces, to me, is we are evolving better relationships with everybody. And in order to be able to do that, we have to have restraint. We have to be able to sit down and do nothing. We have to have self-inquiry. And what you're finding out, what I'm finding out, what the people that I know that are using mindful techniques like this and looking at it, is that their relationships unfold better. And that there's really very little that's needed in order to navigate conflict. And relationships always have some level of conflict. And it's how we learn how to navigate that answers the questions of the relationship. And sometimes as we learn how to navigate that, right, we can stay settled in that moment of, this relationship needs to end.
Yeah.
That place of where I can walk away from this without going nuts, because I've looked at the components of it without getting judgmental, without being reactive, and just being, this is not working for me. And if we can't change this, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And this is relationship building. This is how we learn how to do this. And when we can do this, when we can model this kind of just hanging out, our kids aren't reactive. They're learning how to do it. They're learning how to have inquiry. They're learning how to do relationships better as children, as adolescents, as young adults, because they've got a patterning for it. And if we're just sitting there going, I remember my grandson saying once, it's like, you don't get upset about this stuff. What's that about?
Yeah. Like that's weird.
What's to get upset about? This is just what's here. Let's solve the problem, right?
Yeah. Like I could imagine someone being like, you're in traffic and you're not screaming if all they'd ever seen was like, oh my God, what's the, you know what I mean?
Right.
You're like, how are you in traffic and not screaming? If they've never seen it before, I'd be like, I don't know. It's one of the options. And I've found that screaming didn't make the cars move. I don't know.
Right.
It made me upset and didn't move the cars. So I didn't.
And it upset everybody around me, right?
Right. More and more, I'm believing at a core level the things you taught. Like kids gravitate towards health.
Mm-hmm.
And even in situations like I'm in with a child that won't come see me, that can be the last fight, the last ditch effort to like not gravitate towards health, right? Just to like hang on and have some level of independence.
And one of them is
gravitating much more towards health. And I have basically a stepchild who at one point literally came back and said to my girlfriend, it's too hard to be mad at you. I can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So what would very basic, immature, old Charlie thinking be in this situation is like, this is bad. This is so unhealthy for that child. I need to change this. I need to enforce something. And now I'm just sitting here. I'm letting it unfold and being in the unfolding saying, I didn't create the earth, so I don't have all this wisdom. And this is what's going on. It must be, well, you've even talked to me about not saying good or bad. This is just what's happening. This is her journey. And I don't want to direct her journey and be God. I'm just on my own journey and I'm here for her. I'm like, wherever this journey takes her, I'm here. And I do have a sense that it's good or it's not bad. You know what I mean? I'm not thinking of it as negative. I feel sad. I mean, I'm like, cause I remember when, remember I told you the kids found their grandmother dead. I went to grief counseling and, remember them saying, you know, kind of like, this is the new normal, and missing someone is another side of loving them. That means you really had love in your life. So I don't believe it to be negative when I miss the child that I'm not seeing, because I'm like, that means we had a true love. Like I really, really love her. Mm-hmm. And this is part of that. And there's a longing. That's not negative. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a longing. Yeah. And I think it's part of the beauty. It's just the part of it that's not the happy, cushy feeling. You know, it's the sensation people want to say, no, that's not good. I want to get away from that. As opposed to just go, I want all of love, including this part.
Right. And love is about holding the space for that person to have a better experience if that's what is going to lead them to health, or to have whatever experience is going to lead them, but not being mad at them because they're in a place that they're at.
And I personally think from my upbringing and the things I've learned that love for a 16-year-old must include, hey, baby, you've got room to go practice being a grown-up. Right. I want you to make some decisions, and some bad ones or ones that you look back and go, I wish I'd done them differently, or they led to discomfort. I want you. I mean, you're 2 years from being on your own in a lot of families, right? At a college somewhere. Like now is the time, and this is the environment where you get to make decisions, and including boundaries. Mm-hmm. Did I want to be the person that you said, this is not the person I want to be around? I didn't want that, but I want you living this way. Mm-hmm. I want you to be a strong person. I mean, I have people in my life who I've said, you're no longer part of my life. I've set a boundary with.
Right.
So I want my children to have that strength.
And you're sitting here also in this process, Charlie, of loving your daughter, not being angry with what she's doing, just feeling the hurt and the pain of what's taking place for you and for her.
Yeah.
And holding the prospect of something to change. And this is what we want to be able to do with our kids. You know, we've had these conversations around alienation. We've had these conversations around separating children. And what I've noticed along the way is some patterns go towards things coming back together, and some patterns go towards further distance between the two. And I can honestly say that even though they're two very different experiences, everybody's growing. I mean, this stuff that, I watch my clients, you go through these processes is it's growth producing if we can sit down and take ownership of this stuff, and we can get out of projecting ourselves and our stuff onto other people, and just noticing that when we do project that's mine, that's not theirs, that's my stuff, that's not who they are. These are the things that I'm trying to resolve, and I need to take ownership of that. And coming back, what the don't just do something, sit there gives us the opportunity is to examine our belief systems, to look at the rectangle stuff that our family of history brings forward, and learn just to watch the story, just to sit in observation of this. And, this changes our perspective on things if it's left alone. It's just, it just is got this beautiful organic process of evolving. Yes. And that's what we're here to do, right?
And we are. And I think the resistance to leaving it alone boils down to some sort of a control or some sort of idol worship. Lots of the time it's money in like the world that I live in. Like, why do I feel stressed when I don't check emails? Because someone's going to get upset. It's going to cost me money. And it's this weird form of money worship, right? And I have this other person in my life that's like, I don't ever worry about what I'm not doing. It always works itself out. I'm like, wow, that's beautiful, right? And same thing here, like releasing the control. Like, I need to make something happen. I need to make it different. So much more peace comes.
Right.
You go.
Yes. And so much of it is trying to avoid a sensation that we don't want to have. And it's just, again, it's just sensation.
I don't think I got it the first time, but going through that podcast episode with Eric on dualism the second time, and then having in between conversations with you, which is why it's so important to have a consultant or a coach or be in a group or something, not just hear the podcast, but then be talking about them and then going back to them, right? I don't think I got it the first time, but man, is sensation such a huge part of this. Like, I feel something I don't want to feel, and therefore I need to go change that. That's not true.
Right. Or project it onto somebody else to change it, which creates more crap.
Or blame them. I feel this way because of you, or whatever it is. The judgment that it shouldn't be, the decision that you need to change it, or that something needs to be done. Gosh, that's been so helpful for me, and I hope it is for the listeners too. It's like, we're supposed to have uncomfortable things in our lives. How do we know that? Because we do. Right? It's not heaven, or if that even exists, it's not heaven. We know that because we're here, right?
And they're the facilitators of change. Without it, there's nothing that is
right.
gives us the impetus.
No, like all the good things I've done in my life, weight loss, I owned a gym, the building of muscle, all of it involves discomfort, breakdown, repair. I mean, that we're really just talking about life. The only life there is to live is this one that has what we call ups and downs and different sensations, some of which are more pleasant and more welcome than others. But you can't have life without the others.
All right, my man. I think that we've knocked the bejeebies out of this one.
Perfect. So episode 64, one of my favorite sayings I've ever heard since I've met Brooke, and thank you, Eric, for bringing it to our world here. Don't just do something. Sit there. This really is the fourth rule of disengagement. Disengage, 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 which those three are actually different. We talked about that in another episode. It's not the same thing repeated 3 times. They're levels. And the fourth would be, you don't always have to act. Sometimes it's very appropriate to not. And just wait or take a nap.
Right.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Brooke, people don't have to wait until Friday mornings to get more content. If this is something that's helpful for them, right? This isn't the first time you've broadcast anything or record anything or put anything out there in the world. What are the other ways people can get the help more aggressively or speed up their recovery process? What materials are available for people right now?
Well, I've written a book called The Black Hole of High Conflict, and it's available on Amazon and Kindle.
Great.
And everything that we're talking about is really compressed and put into there. So this is a really good starter place to get in and get your mind working and to see what these concepts are about and how to start to apply them. The other place that I think that is valuable is to go to our website and look at some of the blog articles that I've written. Those are available there as well. They go into some of these other arenas, and that's at www.highconflict.net. So the book, the website are also really good places to get the material. And also we have classes. We have high conflict diversion program classes that you can get into and get some one-on-one help with this as well.
And you know me, I'm aggressive. Whatever I want to become good at or learn, I find someone who's good at it and pay them and hire them and shorten my learning curve. What if somebody just wants your help? Somebody says, Brook has this information. He's good at something I'm not good at yet, and I want to work with him. Do you have any type of coaching or consultations or anything like that?
Absolutely, I do. I do one-on-one coaching for custody cases. I help people get ready for family court services. If you've got that in your community, I work with attorneys and clients to help them with managing and strategically setting them up to have more successful cases as well.
And how do they reach out? You want them to just go to the website or email or phone, or what's the best way for them to reach out, raise their hand, and say, I need some help?
They can email me. My direct email is brook@highconflict.net. That's BROOK at highconflict, HIGH, conflict.net.
Perfect. That's everything everybody would need to get some help, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brook.